The deal been reached to reopen the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, I don't want to say it has been. It's sort of open right now. You know, we have a thing called the blockade headed up by the U.S. Navy, and we control it. And now we control it, but they can always shoot something. They always have something or drop a mine. And if you have one mine sitting out there, you sort of mess things up because people don't want to take their billion-dollar boats and accidentally get hit by a mine. But I think we're doing very well. I just, you know, I'm involved in the negotiation. I think we're doing fine. It could be said. Fortunately, I built up so much during my term. I rebuilt the military and also loaded it up with a lot of stuff. And we have certain types of munitions that are very powerful. That we have unlimited, virtual unlimited supply. We have others where it's a little bit tighter, and we're getting them in on a daily basis. As you know, our defense companies are building more plants right now than at any point in history.
Well, we know that the way voter suppression works, you know, there are three component pieces. Can you register and stay on the rolls? Can you cast a ballot, and does that ballot get counted? And so in a lot of these states, they are testing out the waters during primaries so they can do the full show in November. And so, yes, in states across the South and across the country, we're seeing attempts to limit polling places. North Carolina, where they're removing polling stations from black college campuses. They are trying their best to test out the voter suppression mechanisms now. But because we know what they're doing, the way I want us to approach it is if they're going to show us their hand, if they're going to show us how they plan to cheat, let's learn from it. Let's use the primaries to test out our power as well. And we're seeing that happen across the country, where voters in Mississippi showed out in such force that they were able to break a supermajority that has held in Mississippi for decades. That in North Carolina, where Sidney Batch is the Senate minority leader, she is going to break the superminority in North Carolina. And we use primaries to not just test the waters as they are, but to remind ourselves of our strength. And by using this interregnum, by using the time to register voters, to check voter registration, to recruit poll watchers, to do the mechanisms, we can get ready for November much in the way that they are.
And Chief Data Analyst Harry Etten. So what's going on here?
What is going on, Mr. Berman? What's going on is simple. Is the MAGA movement was built among the working class, non-college Americans. And take a look at this trend line that we're looking at in the data. Here we go. Okay, net favorability rating, the MAGA movement, non-college adults. Back in October of 2024, look at that. On the plus side of the ledger, positive, plus 6 points. Down we go into the Atlantic Ocean now. Look at this movement. Now minus 22 points. That is a shift, Johnny B, of 28 points away from the MAGA movement, away with non-college Americans. So the bottom line is the group at which the Trump movement was built upon, they are shifting away and saying, we don't like MAGA anymore.
Same question, same poll here. This is really interesting to see these numbers move like that.
Yes, exactly right. It's the same question, same poll.
All right. So how about what the same group is saying about Donald Trump specifically?
Yeah, okay. So you know what? The idea being, okay, maybe they've soured on MAGA, but they haven't soured on MAGA, but maybe they haven't soured on me, Donald Trump might be saying. Ain't the truth. Take a look here. Okay, non-college voters on Trump. Hello. Okay, in the 2024 election, he won them by 13 points, right? That was the reason he won. He won among non-college voters, a very strong performance amongst them. And that, of course, was the reason he was able to win, because college voters were against him. But look at this now. Minus 19 points. Minus 19 points. We're talking about an even bigger shift here. We're talking about, what is this? This is a 32-point shift away from the President of the United States when it comes to his key core political group. This is why he's in so much trouble. It's not just that college voters are against Trump now. It turns out that non-college voters, the ones that he built his presidential bid on, have waved adios, goodbye, see you later, Mr. Trump. We don't like you anymore.
So what impact might this have on Republican House members?
Okay, Johnny B is asking the key question here, because maybe they're abandoning President Trump, but you know what? The midterm elections, they may not like Democrats either. Well, if you're a congressional Republican, you wish that to be true, I have bad news for you, because it turns out that the non-college voters are turning on you too, and it may in fact turn you out of power in the congressional elections coming up in the midterms. Choice for the House, non-college voters, 2024 election. Look at this. Republicans plus 13 points. Now Democrats actually lead among non-college voters in an average of polls. It's just a point, but you know what? When it comes to a point, and given how well the Democrats are doing among college voters, these are the types of numbers in which blue waves are built, and therefore we can say that the key group that put Donald Trump in the White House, the key group that he built the MAGA movement upon, is leaving him, and it's leaving congressional Republicans too.
Harold Denton, thank you very much for that.
Friday, 7 August, year of our Lord 2026. Of course, we've got a lot to go through today about populist nationalism. Got to make sure the emphasis on populism. That's how you keep working class people that we've built this movement on from the very beginning. Enthusiastic and make sure they're going to the polls and getting the vote out. All of that we're going to continue through the morning. Had a jobs report, and I think you'll understand why maybe there's a little lack of enthusiasm. Looks like wage gains, which were ahead of inflation, that may be slowing. We'll get to all that. I think we're going to try to have somebody on from Treasury towards the second hour of the show. Got a very special guest. I want to talk about the deep state and taking down the deep state. Lara Logan joins us. Let's go ahead and play some. We got a little compilation of clips, and we'll come to her.
Journal editorial board wrote this week, Mr. Paul is too set on criticizing policy differences in our view, and Dr. Fauci does not belong in jail on evidence that we have seen. Do you still believe that Dr. Anthony Fauci should go to prison?
I'll give you an example of the level of dishonesty. In January of 2020, as the epidemic was just coming to our shores, he received private information, and he agreed with it, that the epidemic didn't start in the wet market. The wet market was a super spreader event, but the original people who were sick from COVID were not associated with the wet market. But because the wet market is an argument for a natural occurrence, he continued to argue that for year and year, but he wasn't telling us that he privately disagreed with himself. He also said in January 2020, he said that we are worried that this virus has been manipulated because we know they do gain-of-function research. So when he says, oh, we never funded gain-of-function research in private, he was very worried that they were doing this research. Now, he would argue our money didn't go to it, but I would argue that you really shouldn't be funding a lab that you're worried that they are doing gain-of-function research.
So should he go to prison for that, Senator?
Well, that's a good question. Did he lie to Congress? I think he did lie to Congress, and I think to be fair, that people who lie to Congress should be charged with a felony, and if convicted, go to jail. There's also the question of destroying records. That's also a felony crime. So I think both destroying records and lying to Congress are serious crimes. But the reason is, and what I've always wanted more than, whether he goes to jail or not, is the truth and an understanding from the public that this research is so dangerous that it has to have intense scrutiny, that I think in all likelihood we funded a lab and this virus came from the lab and maybe 15 million people died. This isn't the first time. This happened in 1977. Right. We have virtually absolute proof in 1977 that a virus leaked out and infected the whole world, an influenza virus. Seeing no other motions, the question is on reporting of an original resolution regarding contempt of Congress. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator Johnson.
Yes.
Senator Langford.
Aye.
Senator Scott.
Yes.
Senator Hawley.
Aye.
Senator Moreno.
On behalf of the millions of people harmed by Anthony Fauci, resoundingly yes.
Senator Ernst.
Aye.
Senator Moody. Aye. Senator Peters.
No.
Senator Hassan.
No.
Senator Blumenthal.
No.
Senator Fetterman.
No.
Senator Kim.
No.
Democrats all no.
Senator-
Republicans all yay. Fauci sent over for contempt. A lot going on. By the way, Senate, Neil McCabe's up on Capitol Hill. The Senate, here's their priorities. They're voting right now on a Russian sanctions bill in memory of Lindsey Graham. So embrace that. Also, they're going to vote on a CR that still has the spending of Biden and Pelosi and kick the can down the road to right before Christmas, where they're going to have omnibus. All coming, folks. That's their priorities today. You notice no Save America on that. Lara Logan, Fauci, the deep state, the revelations of John Solomon over the last couple of days. Do you think there's enough energy and urgency about taking on the deep state? And let's lead with Fauci, his contempt, and even deeper, his crimes against humanity, ma'am, of which you were basically crucified for pointing out years ago.
Steve, is it energy that you need, or is it courage?
moral courage, right? And lack of corruption. Because one of the things that we're learning is that so many elected leaders are on the payroll of the Chinese Communist Party. And so you see them acting in public in ways that just don't make sense, right? It's not what they were elected on. It's not what the president is asking of them. It's not what the American voters are asking of them. And yet time and time and time again, they fail us. What I liked there was Senator Bernie Moreno in that clip that you played there. He said, on behalf of millions, right? That's why he was voting aye. So, I mean, I'm not a prophet, and I'm not some Washington insider where I'm sitting in these circles, right, as they're figuring out what they're going to do. What I know that we have seen is just a striking disappointment when it comes to the Senate. You know, years ago, a very senior senator sat in a car with me and explained off the record how Mitch McConnell runs the Senate like a mob. Now we have Mitch McConnell, who's probably dead. I mean, we don't know that, but it certainly doesn't look good. And, you know, people aren't buying that he's okay. So we have this issue with Mitch McConnell, and then you have Fauci sit there. And it's not that he expressed one thing in private and it didn't reflect his feelings when he was in public. He lied. He absolutely lied. Everything that the American people, and let's not forget, millions and tens of millions of people around the world were subjected to. One of the reasons they came after you so hard. How were you so certain at the time? A lot of people now are getting on the anti-Fauci bandwagon, but War Room, and particularly yourself, how were you so certain about his lies at the time and call him out about the lies at the time as the reason they came and specifically tried to crucify you in the media, ma'am? I'm actually really glad you asked that, because if you don't stand up at the time for the truth when it really, really counts, right, when it's going to cost you, then what's the point? Then it's just like a bumper sticker, right? Then principles become bumper stickers. So this is what I learned very early on. I was speaking to doctors and I was speaking to people in the intelligence community, and they all told me consistently things like this. The Chinese only have biolabs. Right. That's all they work on is bioweapons. They don't try to cure cancer to save their people. They don't try to treat people for, basic diseases. No, their people die of basic diseases because they couldn't care less about their people. So what does U.S. intelligence do? We monitor every single lab that China builds from the time they start building it. So there's nothing that happens in a lab overseas that our intelligence community doesn't already know. So this idea that, oh, goodness, we were just taken surprised by Wuhan. What were they doing there? That was a lie from the very beginning. Secondly, COVID-19. No, why does nobody ask about the 19? 19 means there were 18 versions of COVID before they got to 19. What does that indicate? It indicates a human hand. That is manipulation. That is gain of function research. Steve, people have such short memories. Do you remember going back to Richard Nixon? I know you're a big historian, right? So you'll remember that going back to November 1969, Richard Nixon outlawed what? Our offensive bioweapons program. What he didn't outlaw was our bioweapons defense program. So where was one of the main locations for this kind of research that was going on? This history is available to anybody who wants to look for it, right? Fort Detrick, Maryland is one of the main centers for our bioweapons research. Now, what did we do? It's not just Fort Detrick, Maryland. It's also the Dugway Proving Grounds and other places like this. But that's the main hub for what? For the continuation of the Nazi programs from the Second World War. We also, by the way, there's a special unit that the Japanese military had, Unit 731, that was also doing bioweapons experiments. We bought all that, and we spared all those people who were running those experiments on thousands of Chinese prisoners and other prisoners. But what did we do? We gathered all this research so that we could continue to do these things that were purely evil. And one thing I don't understand, Operation Paperclip. How come no one's curious about Operation Paperclip? Why don't we have people screaming for answers about how many Nazi scientists we brought who did the most unspeakable, unforgivable things in the Second World War, and instead of holding them accountable at Nuremberg, we brought them to the United States of America, and we took them to secure facilities, we hid them, behind classification, secret identities, jobs for life. Families were taken care of. You know, they had their families with them. They had homes. They were given all these benefits. And critically, they were given access to high levels of secrecy in the United States government. It wasn't just the scientists that went to NASA. It was the scientists that came and continued bioweapons programs. So what you start to see is when you look into it...
Hang on 1 second. I want to make sure we get plenty of time to stick the landing here. It's very powerful. Lara Logan is with us on a Friday. We're going to go from Texas. We're going to go to Florida shortly. Short break. Lara Logan on the other side.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Lara Logan, as usual, is dead spot on. In fact, if you remember when we shifted the show to War and Pandemic on the 20th of January of 2020, 20 January 2020, we shifted to War and Pandemic from War and Impeachment. Dr. Stephen Hatfield was the first consultant we had come on. He was with us for a week, then he went to the White House. Where did we get him from? We called and said, who's the top guy on the bioweapons defense team up at Fort Detrick? Hatfield knows a few things. Lara Logan, we're about to have a vote. Given everything you're saying about paperclip, all of this, we're about to have a vote in the United States Senate. I think even as we speak, where the Republicans may get tied, it's down to like one vote about Todd Blanche being confirmed as Attorney General. What's your recommendation to Maine Justice? What's your recommendation to the Attorney General about what needs to be done about the deep state? You're an expert in it. What does he have to do?
Well, Steve, I'm definitely an expert at being targeted by the deep state, and so are you, right? We know what these bastards are capable of. So I would say to Todd Blanche, my number one thing is accountability. Number two is accountability. And number three is accountability. This is what millions of Americans voted for. They are tired. I mean, people want the truth. There's no question about it. We need the whole truth. Nobody wants to be misled anymore. But the truth without accountability is absolutely meaningless.
Given what John Solomon's put up, do you start with McCabe? Do you start with Comey? Do you start with Brennan? I mean, Tom Cotton, because of, do you go after prosecutions of these people now?
100%. You know, it's disgusting to me that it was Republicans who stood in the way of the anti-weaponization fund, because then you start to see people for who they really are, right? And it's the same thing here. The fact that I think that the president has to worry so much about how Republicans are going to react, not Republican voters, but Republican leaders are going to keep standing in his way. That case down in Florida with John Brennan is absolutely critical, because Brennan is an operational commander of everything that is going on. He's not just some bystander. He's not someone who dipped in for 5 minutes and then left. He's an operational commander. And the Justice Department knows how to do this, Steve. What do they do all the time? They get one person and they put them under enough pressure that they flip and start giving up all the others. And these people don't have honor. They don't have, they have no real character. They don't stand for anything that is good and powerful. So it doesn't take them long to start ratting each other out, right? And that's where you have to go. And what I would say to Todd Blanche, I mean, that man did the weaponization fund, and who opposed him? Republican senators. That's what Cornyn was still holding over his head when it came to the nomination. That's outrageous. That just tells you that this sort of elitist mentality where people think that they don't have to worry about consent of the governed, it means that they have forgotten what is written in the Constitution and the Declaration of Liberty. And now what you have is Todd Blanche, hanging by a thread. Is he going to get confirmed? Is he not going to get confirmed? He could stay as acting AG and keep doing what he's doing.
You gave so much of your professional life covering. You were a war correspondent for years, and at the tip of the spear, whether it's the Arab Spring, was Afghanistan, Iraq. On the evening of November 3rd, less than 90 days away, ma'am, we could have Mamdani running New York City. You could have Abdul as the senator from Michigan, basically the arsenal of democracy that won World War II. We could have Talarico as the senator from the jewel of the crown of the Union in Texas. Your thoughts, given you know so much about 9/11, you know so many of the victims and the families of 9/11, or on the 25th anniversary, 25 years after that attack in Lower Manhattan, we could have essentially Marxist jihadists in some of the most important positions of power in the country, ma'am.
I would say to people, the most important thing to understand is that every time you look at Mamdani or James Talarico, what you need to see is that on his left, is a globalist, and on his right is someone that is a Marxist, right? These people do not fight alone. James Talarico, I call him Baby Beto, aka Little Satan, right? That's what he is. Okay, I'm just going to tell you, there's not a chance in hell that half man, tiny little evil, horrible child is going to get elected in the state of Texas with a fair vote. Unless you're going to cheat, he doesn't stand a chance in hell. I don't care what the polls say. I don't care what people are telling you. This is a state that is firmly for gas and God and guns. And when you stand up and tell Texans, okay, that God is non-binary and all this other BS, no one is buying it. But they chose this little baby Beto because they thought, what did they do last time? They actually got Beto O'Rourke officially within 3% of Ted Cruz. No, they didn't really. You can go to Russ Ramsden and all these other people that Steve, who work on election fraud behind the scenes, and they will show you how Ted Cruz actually won by 12%. The threat in Texas is not James Talarico. It's the machinery behind him. It's the lack of courage in the Senate that is controlled by Republicans and in Congress that's controlled by Republicans. It's the lack of loyalty. It's the RINOs. It's the treason and the traitors and the betrayal. This is why the president really has to exercise the power that he has to make sure that we don't walk into the midterms with the same circumstances that we've walked into all the other elections that have been stolen. And as far as New York goes, the idea that 25 years after people watched, there were New Yorkers who threw themselves from those burning buildings. I will never forget listening to the voice messages on answering machines and voicemail from the people that were on the planes that were saying goodbye to the people that they loved. As much as I understand the true nature and threat of the political forces using Islam as a cover to conquer Western civilization and America, what I am more concerned about is that these Islamic forces are a proxy for the globalists, along with the Marxists and all that comes on the left, and along with the traitors that live within the United States and within our government, across all agencies, and within our political parties and in our colleges and in our schools and so on. The people that are teaching your children to hate America, the people that are teaching us that America is the only evil in the world, these are people that are breaking the law. They are advocating for the overthrow of the government, and they have already demonstrated that they're willing to use violence to achieve that end. This is domestic terrorism at its absolute finest. I don't understand why the McCarthy hearings ended the way they did. I don't understand why they dismantled the Committee on Internal Threats, and why they allowed this cancer to proliferate in our institutions, because it is an existential threat to the United States. But never forget that these Marxists are the tools of the globalists who are directing all of it, including
hang on. They're voting on a sanctions bill on Russia. They're voting on a CR to continue the debt and the games that Biden then played. They're not going to take up. They said, we are not going to take up Save America. In Axios today, there's unnamed sources in the Senate saying this is the problem with Trump. He keeps pushing things that we're not interested in, like Save America. Are you saying in so many words that if they're not going to take up Save America, do you believe the president of the United States needs to sign a national security emergency memorandum that actually looks at this coming election, these upcoming elections, that we got to get the voter roll squared away? We have to have people at the polling places, all the things we need to do to have free and fair elections. Are you calling for that if the Save America Act is not passed?
Steve, I don't have to call for it. I'm just a journalist with no power. The president is calling for it. You can see it in that speech, that historic speech that he made to the nation that most of the media chose to ignore, right? Or they attacked him for it. He is laying out the foundation of exactly what you're talking about, because he's telling you, look, who was the last president that went after the CIA publicly? I'm going to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. I know you know who said that. So do many people in your audience. It was JFK. Okay. Then Trump went out and he actually showed the evidence that the CIA and the NSA and the FBI and senior leadership in these agencies defrauded the American people and the president himself. This is of a scale that is so catastrophic. If we had an honest media, and quite frankly, if in the conservative media we had people that understood the significance of this and did their due diligence and talked to the people who really understand, we would talk about nothing else. It wouldn't be about missile stockpiles for Iran. We would be talking 24/7 about the treason and sedition that has threatened this country like nothing that has ever threatened it since 1776. Okay, this is one of the biggest things that has ever taken place in the world. And it is not done. So when I hear the president talk about these things, he is setting a clear deadline of the midterm elections. He's letting everybody know we have all of these issues. We have journalists taking money from communist China, going over there, doing these junkets, being paid, and then coming back and essentially acting as spokespeople for the Chinese Communist Party. Okay, we have not seen this. And then we've got military leaders that are creating back channels with the Chinese for the same thing. What does it take to get people to understand that we are literally standing at the gates of Auschwitz? We have walked the 9 miles and it is littered with bodies. Okay, we know what happens. The only thing in front of us, if we pass through those gates, are the gas chambers. Certain death. That's what we're looking at in this country. And we are at war. You know what I would say to the Attorney General of the United States? If you hire bureaucrats, fire them, because you need battlefront commanders. You are on the front lines of this war. If you're going to the White House every day and you're sort of, exhausted because, we're working such a long day this week and all the rest of it, you're not looking at it the same. When I was at war in Afghanistan and in Iraq, and by the way, in Angola, in Mozambique, in many countries all over the world, when you go to war, nobody talks about getting some sleep. Okay, what did Winston Churchill do? He napped for 10 minutes here and there. He power napped because they were fighting every second of their lives. Every moment they knew they were fighting for their survival. That's the mentality that we need across the Trump administration. There are some who are leading like that, but there aren't enough.
Laura, hang on for 1 second. We're taking a short commercial break. Also, Natalie G. Winters, when Laura talks about the expose of the journalists in the General's flag office, Natalie's going to join us in the 11 o'clock hour. Short commercial break. The Lieutenant Governor of Florida is going to join us. Lara Logan is going to hang around. Short break. Back in a moment.
Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Laura, as usual, you're on fire. We're clipping that right now. I want to make sure we push it out. I'm telling the audience, we're going to have Laura back next week to focus on Texas, just a special with Laura to focus on the great state of Texas, which is her adopted state, and she's one of the fiercest warriors down there. Laura, where do people go for your podcast, all your social media, your comments on news of the day? Particularly look like we're going to have this Hormuz deal today. I know you're going to have a lot of commentary on that. Where do people go?
Steve, people can find me on X. I'm at Lara Logan on X. And of course, our show is Going Rogue with Lara Logan. You can find that on Rumble and on YouTube and everywhere else. And I'll tell you this one thing about Iran. What I see is the president laying down suppressive fire on the Iranians, because the number one thing they don't want is Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I'm not saying it's going to work. I'm not saying it's the right thing. It's just that I wonder why people don't ever look at this as a battlefield. They don't want the Iranians being able to maneuver in any direction, and because they are the people who are insane enough to drop a nuclear weapon on behalf of the globalists. That's one of their proxies.
Okay, you get my vote. I'm voting to put you on the National Security Council, ma'am. I think we need some of that fire there. Logan, where give me your podcast and your social media. Where do people go? Because a lot's happening in the next couple of days, and people want to hear it from you. So where do they go?
Going Rogue with Lara Logan. We've had a couple of primary specials that we've done with different candidates like Royce White. You see down there, we got another one coming up with Jonathan DeBarros, who's running for Congress in Connecticut. And then Steve Hilton is coming out today. That is a great interview, by the way. We really focus on the role of Becerra in trafficking hundreds and thousands of children across the southern border. That's a big one. Steve Hilton is doing really well. But, with all the fraud in California, let's see what happens.
We'll get to that. And I want to thank you. Jonathan's actually going to be on our 5 o'clock show today from Connecticut. Great opportunity. Thank you, ma'am. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you so much,
That
Steve.
is pure
Take
fire.
care.
Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins from the free state of Florida. Lieutenant Governor, first, before I ask you about the race, I got to ask you about your service. You were a patriot, Green Beret at the front line, special warfare, your sacrifice for the nation. When you look at a situation, we're 25 years in less than 30 days from 9/11, and you've got Abdul up in Michigan, that in the great industrial heartland of Detroit, that basically, was the arsenal of democracy in World War II. You got Talarico in Texas. You got Mandami, running New York City. What's your sense of the country from 9/11 to today, given particularly your view of being a patriot that went and fought and dedicated your life to this cause, sir?
Well, Steve, that's a great question. And I'll tell you what, first off, I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I had the opportunity to serve. I gave up a leg. I got shot for this nation, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat because we live in the greatest state and the greatest nation in the history of this planet. And to see how far we've drifted from the lessons of September 12th, when we were the American people and we came together, the reason the left, the reason other nations try to divide us by race, by creed, by color, by gender, is because when America comes together and the might of America moves forward under our banner, as we should, with our values, nobody can stop America. That's what I know. That's what I've seen. And I'm honored to have been a part of the tip of the spear. We'll do it again. And we got to come back to those first principles, those values. All the same things Lara just said were completely true. We got to fight. We're in a war. And that's why we got to bring warriors into politics.
The Florida has a different problem than a lot of states, the free state of Florida. It's a lot of the work that Governor DeSantis yourself have done to make it so attractive. People I know are Floridians love Florida for what it has been and historically what it is, this kind of great state of working class and middle class people. Given the success, you've got so many people coming in from the rest of the nation. How are you going to bounce? What is your plan as governor to make sure to Floridians that you don't, I mean, Texas has got the same problem, that these great states that are now attracting people, particularly from the Northeast, how do you make sure that it stays as the Florida that Floridians love and doesn't become radically something else, sir?
Yeah, Steve, great question. Look, first off, leadership isn't talking about things. Leadership is being on the ground doing things, leading from the front, being present. In the first 100 days, we're going to hit 100 cities or towns. We're going to talk to everybody in their communities, who they are, how they are, where they are. We're going to continue to make sure that growth, if it comes, when it happens, it's on Florida's terms. We will never sacrifice our green zones, our waterways. We'll never give up on agriculture. Man, I'm the son of a failed farmer. If we can't feed ourselves, we're never truly free. Food security is national security. And in Florida, we take that incredibly seriously. But that's leadership. It's being on the ground, remembering God gave us 2 ears, one mouth for a purpose. Step in, step up, and don't fail to lead. Lead, follow, or get out of the way. And we're going to lead in Florida.
Lieutenant Governor, give us your vision. What are the 2 or 3 things? I mean, you've got a tough act to follow. You've been as Lieutenant Governor, and people know I was very much anti-DeSantis when he decided to run against President Trump. But I've said from day one, he's been a damn good governor. And if you see some of the stands he's taken recently, he's really been a leader as far as governors. What's your vision? What are the 2 or 3 things that Governor Collins feels he has to accomplish to be successful?
Well, first off, if you're going to come in the shoes of the greatest governor in our state's history, you got to be willing to be bold, innovative, and solve problems as they come up. Governor DeSantis wasn't America's governor until COVID happened, and he stepped into that breach to protect our people and our way of life. First off, I'm day one ready. That was said by DeSantis himself. My moral compass was true in combat all around the globe. I know where right is, where wrong is. I know how to get things done, and that cannot be understated. Second, our world is devolving. We are a high-value target here in Florida. I'm the only Green Beret to ever be a lieutenant governor. If elected, I'll be the only Green Beret to be a governor. Why does that matter? Simply put, because safety starts everything. When our people feel safe, it's strong families, strong communities. Strong communities build a great economy, one business at a time. We are going to personify what Marco Rubio put so aptly just a few weeks ago. In Florida and in America, we are a nation and a state where anybody from anywhere can accomplish anything because our founding fathers gave us a republic if we can keep it.
Talk about, since you fought in the wars in the Middle East, are you concerned? Texas has got this huge problem. We went down, took the show down there for 3 months about putting this proposition to prohibit Sharia law. Are you concerned that Florida, just like Texas, has been targeted by people that want to impose Sharia law here in the United States of America?
Yeah, you always have to be concerned by that. Look, we cannot allow ourselves to devolve into what we've fought against. We are the land of the free because of the brave. And Sharia law has no place in the free state of Florida, no place in the United States of America. It is not commensurate with our Constitution. We got to remind ourselves our freedoms come from God. They're upheld by our Constitution. And when brave men and women step into the breach to do what's right, what's necessary, great things happen. That's how we became the free state of Florida. And we're going to continue to fight. Sharia law will never take hold in Florida. I promise you.
Lieutenant Governor, Governor DeSantis has been at the tip of the spear of this situation with AI, not just the data centers. I'll get back to that in a second, but really saying, hey, if they're not going to be some sort of national, at least beginning of a regulatory framework, I'm going to step up as a governor because it's just not going to happen in Florida. It's really been leadership, I think, has inspired the country to say, hey, we need some sort of national standards. Over the last 48 hours, we know that, according to Axios, that AI may be hurtling towards the singularity. We have a containment problem with some of these models. Now we've got 16 new viruses not known to man, not in nature, being created at Stanford University. What is your position on artificial intelligence, particularly since the tech bros are writing massive checks? What is a Governor Collins going to do about artificial intelligence in the free state of Florida, sir?
Well, I would tell people to check where the donations go because the tech bros haven't given me a dime. I stand with the people of Florida, as I always do. Look, we got to take it exactly for what it is on the ground. It is not time for people who talk and put together news clips. It's time for people who actually step up and walk the walk to protect our people. Look, you have to have regulatory framework that protects the water, our reliability, our ratepayers. But you also have to understand that the people who want to get around those laws work relentlessly. And that means we have to be twice as relentless. We have to move at the speed of people's lives. We have to understand this is modern warfare. This is proxy war. It is exactly the same things we have always faced. We have to stand on our values and we have to protect our people. When it comes to AI, look, we have to remember that AI is a tool. It's like a hammer, a screwdriver, or a saw. A hammer can be very useful, but if used wrongly, it can kill people too. We got to make sure that we understand that data is pure. Otherwise, we're going to change how people think. We got to make sure that when we do this, AI is just something to work as an adjunct, never to replace people. We want to have an economy that uses technology on our terms and moves forward accordingly. People want to be successful. People want to save what makes Florida and turned it into what it is, the free state of Florida. And they want a leader who's willing to step in, call out the BS, and just say it like it is. And that's exactly who I am. I say what I mean what I say, but I actually get results and get things done.
Lieutenant Governor, we've had a number of Florida communities on here about this rezoning and these planning commissions and trying to stand up to them, both Republicans, MAGA, Democrats, independents about these data centers, particularly taking, some of this amazing agricultural land in Florida. What is your stance on the data center, sir?
Look, data centers, we got to make sure we use the right nomenclature too. It's those hyperscale data centers. One singular hyperscale data center can take the same amount of power and water as a city of 50 to 100,000 people. You have to be incredibly concerned by that. We will never allow that power, that water, or that safety in the community to be negated. Nobody wants to listen to the hum within their communities. But the last thing is this: you cannot build a good relationship with a city or town or a county when things are wrapped up in an NDA. And I think the people, when they make this decision, should absolutely have radical clarity in terms of who the end customer is. And let me promise you this: if you lie, you cheat, you steal, you try to dupe the people of Florida, we are going to have your back end. You're going to deal with us because we protect our people and our way of life every single day in the free state of Florida.
Some of the people in Florida are very concerned about utility rates, how the Power Commission got off track on this solar. What is Governor Collins going to do about that?
Well, I'm going to do the same thing I've always done. I passed 55 bills in 3 short years in the Senate to include decoupling from those Obama-era nonsensical green energy blah, blah, blahs, right? It's time for us to step up and fight for things that work. I'm a big believer in small modular, micro reactors, hydrogen minus the carbon capture nonsense. We're going to call it for what it is. We have to have energy on demand. We want to drop the rates, but it has to be affordable, reliable, and safe for the people of Florida. I'm going to continue that fight just as I always have. I've led from the front. And in our administration, the Governor DeSantis and Jay Collins' administration of Florida, We have made a difference in energy, and we're going to continue to fight that same thing to make sure that you live your American dream right here in the free state of Florida.
Lieutenant Governor, where do people go if they want to hit you with a donation, or more importantly, even volunteer for you? Where do folks go right now? What website and what's your social media? How do they keep up with you? Because this is a horse race.
Man, it sure is. And luckily, I only have one leg, so only one leg is tired, Steve, so I have a mechanical advantage in this, right? You can go to JAYFOR Florida. That's J for Florida.com. You can follow us on social media at JCollinsFL. And let me be clear, we do not need more career politicians. We do not need more people who talk and talk. We need warriors who step in, step up, and protect our people and our way of life. That's who I am. That's what I do. And that's why I'm going to be the next governor of the great state of Florida. Thanks, Steve.
Lieutenant Governor Collins, you're a good man. Thank you so much. You're a patriot
You too,
hero.
brother.
Thank you for joining us in the war room. Appreciate you, sir. Pretty intense campaign down there. Pretty intense campaign. We had Renner, naval officer, Collins, sergeant in the special forces. Of course, the congressman, everybody knows Byron. We're going to have James Fishback is going to join us in the second hour. We'll talk to him. He's excited. A lot of young people down there will find out all about it. Take your phone out. Text Bannon, Bannon. The Ramirez deal should be announced, I don't know, shortly. Figure out this situation in the Middle East. Markets are turbulent. Gold is on the rise. Find out why. Bannon, Bannon, 989898. Get to Philip Patrick and his team and do it today. Short break.
We rejoice when there's no more. Let's take down the CCP.
Louisiana. Mr. President, I rise today to speak to the nomination of Todd Blanche to be Attorney General. Over the last several days, I've heard from lots of people sharing their views on this nomination. And most of the time it's clear. Mr. Blanche has become a referendum on how people feel about President Trump. If you don't like the president, you don't like Mr. Blanche. If you do like the president, you do. I have not approached it that way. This process should be about Mr. Blanche and how he will go forward in a difficult job and how the American people can be best served. I have a history with Mr. Trump, but that history does not matter one bit. On the one hand, Mr. Blanche does not need to be Senate confirmed. He can continue to serve at the pleasure of the President as Deputy Attorney General or even Acting Attorney General if this vote is pulled. On the other hand, I am told that Senate confirmation is important in interactions with the President, with others in the Cabinet, and is important to DOJ employees in general. Being Senate confirmed gives him greater leverage to push for things that should be pushed for. This does not demean the Senate's role. Important issues have been discussed through this process, and Mr. Blanche has made commitments. Now on to the specific nomination. Since Mr. Blanche passed out of Judiciary Committee on August the 4th, I've spoken to Mr. Blanche 5 or 6 times. We have texted many more. I just got off the phone with him. I've spoken multiple times to Senators Murkowski, Cornyn, Tillis. Senator Whitehouse shared his concerns. Additionally, I spoke with current and past administration officials, including a long conversation with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Late last night, I spoke to 2 U.S. attorneys from Louisiana, David Corsell and Kurt Wall. Of course, there's been a lot to read and a lot to consider, and I slept on it overnight. Let's start with the concerns. Mr. Blanche showed poor judgment in approving the anti-weaponization slush fund and exempting the president from IRS audits. No American should be unfairly targeted by the law, but no American should be above the law. Mr. Blanche said these were mistakes, and he has made efforts to kill the slush fund. I am particularly concerned about episodes of apparent lawfare. DOJ bringing suits against political enemies. Both parties, presidents of both parties, have been guilty of this. It must stop. It should stop now. A never-ending cycle of prosecuting political enemies undermines the rule of law, degrades the public's trust in our institutions, and makes our politics more extreme when we need to unite to solve the big problems of our time. I'm not entirely satisfied where this is, and I have no doubt that I'll have concern in the future. I will note that I've learned that some of the cases that have been publicly reported to be under investigation by the Department of Justice have been dismissed or are no longer being pursued. I am realistic that President Trump can be unrelenting on this, but this will be true no matter who the Attorney General is, and this is the rationale for having a Senate-confirmed Attorney General with more leverage to push back. I will also note that Mr. Blanche is criticized for things over which he has no control. He points out that he has been criticized for presidential pardons given to January 6 rioters, some of whom assaulted police officers. Many of us were here then. But this is a presidential prerogative, and he is not the president. He also points out that he can advise the president, but the president is not obligated to take his advice. That is the same thing that former Attorney General Barr said in a separate conversation. And Mr. President, I can absolutely believe that President Trump at times would not take advice. But even critics admit that Mr. Blanche knows the law and is a hands-on administrator. He has instructed U.S. attorneys to focus on violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud in programs like Medicare and Medicaid. Mr. Corsell, the U.S. Attorney in New Orleans, says that when he needed extra resources, Acting Attorney General Blanche provided them to finish a big drug case. Both Mr. Corsell and Mr. Walls said that DOJ has accountability measures for each prosecutor in their office, and that there are weekly calls between their offices and DOJ to review the performance of each prosecutor. That morale was high, not despite the accountability measures, but because of the accountability measures. More cases were being processed and convictions being obtained. David Corsell spoke of almost $1 billion in fraud being recovered for the U.S. taxpayer from health care fraud. Both men said that having a permanent Senate-confirmed Attorney General was important. I cannot overstate Mr. Walls and Mr. Corsell's support for Mr. Blanche. When former Attorney General Bill Barr endorsed Mr. Blanche, he said Mr. Blanche will run the department as effectively as anyone can under President Trump. Some have called that faint praise. I don't think that it is. I think it is a reality. Barr specifically addressed the allegation that Mr. Blanche would be a yes man for the president. He said that any attorney to represent a client well has to have tough conversations and confront a client with difficult truths. That because of his previous attorney-client relationship with President Trump, Mr. Blanche would be precisely the person to push back on President Trump. But that ultimately, and here Barr echoed what I heard from Blanche, decisions are made by the president. Mr. Blanche is not perfect, and he will tell you this, but the choice is not between perfection and Mr. Blanche. It is between Mr. Blanche and another acting attorney general who may not run the department effectively under President Trump and who indeed may not be as good as Mr. Blanche. This puts at risk the progress made fighting violent crime, human and drug trafficking, and fraud, and this does not serve the American people well. This is not a referendum on President Trump. It is a decision regarding Mr. Blanche in very specific circumstances. All considered, I will vote for Mr. Blanche. I'll be criticized for this vote. What's new? But the people of Louisiana
So,
can be
Todd
assured
Blanche is going to be
they
now
worked hard
confirmed.
to understand the issue.
I got it. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. Cassidy stumbles through that, makes his argument why he's voting for Todd Blanche. I don't know if we needed him to go into the level of detail. Todd Blanche got his work cut out for him. Now, Todd, you're going to get voted. You're going to get confirmed. Now you got to go to work. You need to take down the deep state. Where's Tom Cotton? Where's the Brennan transcript from the Senate hearings? Let's go. Let's roll. We're burning daylight. You heard that poll this morning that Harry Enton has some pretty good polling in 24. Remember that? About people turning on the Biden regime, looking forward to President Trump. Pretty shocking about non-college educated. That means working class, blue collar folks in this country. Not happy. You got to turn around. Birch Gold, take your phone out, text Bannon, Bannon. That would be your humble servant here. 989898. In a time of turbulence, find out why gold moved from $1,000 to what, 5,000? Well, I think 42 or 43 right now. Why it's been a hedge, particularly in times of financial turbulence. Some of the employment numbers today show maybe a little turbulence continuing on. We're going to try to break that down in the next hour. James Fishback is running for the governorship of the free state of Florida in the Republican primary. Fishback next in the War Room.